Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you so much for being in class. Jason, thank you for engineering the broadcast. And I was just talking with Jason, and we've come to an agreement. No twisting of arms was necessary. I just asked him that when he becomes president, he is running for president, JasonStanek2020.com, that he would still reserve 2 hours, 5 days a week in the mornings for Engineering USA Prepares and giving those of us who are paying attention the update, the State of the Union update, daily update, what's happening from his office. So he will still be Engineering USA Prepares even after he becomes president of the United States. And you know what's really interesting about this, class and Guineith, that we are watching the sum of all individual stupidity right here in the United States, and the sum of all individual greed. I've been talking about that for years and years and years. And we're talking about who's going to become the CEO, right? We got two guys that are vying for office. 71 million people have already cast their opinion. They've already, we'll call it quote unquote voted. And it makes no sense to me. So if you're going to cast your opinion, why would you not wait until you heard all of the information? I can just see these people with their arms crossed, body language saying, I know who I'm going to vote for. I don't need any more information. I'm going to vote for this guy. And then people are saying, oh, geez, I should have, I wish I could take my vote back. Now, in some states, I guess you can, but in some you can't. It makes no sense to me to vote early unless, you're going to be under the knife and you're going to be in the hospital or something like that. It makes, or you're going to be away on a military mission. Other than that, if you're going to vote, which I'm not going to, but if you were, it makes no sense to me to cast your vote without all the available information, because now people are, who might have voted for Jumpin' Joe the plagiarist, they're finding out that, that family is a criminal syndicate all by itself. So, today it's Guineith. Tomorrow it's Ricky and J.C. Cole. Friday it's Bert. We're going to be talking about hour number 2, a DIY security system, how to install wireless networking. Now, I'm not a fan of wireless, but in these times, if you need a surveillance system and you need to watch it remotely and you need to do it quickly, I think wireless is going to be your overall best choice. Not from an electromagnetic radiation standpoint, but just from a safety standpoint in terms of your own personal security, health-related issues aside. And in hour number 1, I'll be talking about tips from the book. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia in the dark. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
I am really, really well. And Guineith, I wanted to share with our class. I mentioned yesterday that if Rich Sheehan wants to turn the heat on, he's got to think about that 9 months before, while it's dragging the wood out of dragging the dropped trees out of the fallen branches out of the woods, cutting them, stacking them, drying them, keeping them out of the weather, putting them in the wood stove, and then he can have heat. So he's got to think about, if he wants to warm up his place 6 to 9 months at least earlier than, when he wants it warm. You have to do the same thing. We have to do the same thing. And I was thinking about tea. So if you wanted to make a cup of tea, would you just share with us what is involved in you making a cup of tea and how long? It sounds to me like you have to prepare 6 to 9 months in advance for that cup of tea that you had this morning. Is that true?
Well, the thing with our climate here, because we are in a semi-arid climate, most of the wood up in the forest is dry anyway. So all we have to do is go and get it. So, and that usually happens once a day. And at the moment, because my youngest son is still at home, that's his job. But when he's not here, that's my job. So, but yeah, the branches, they fall down up in the forest, and often they fall down when they're still kind of green. So I have to wait, I would say, about a year before they're ready to chop up. But we have a similar cycle, but we don't get them down from the forest and then wait until they're, and then, cut them up at that stage. We just notice where they're fallen down, and I say to myself, or Theo says to himself, oh yeah, there's a branch there. In a year's time, I'll remember where that is, and we'll come back and we'll get that one. So the advantage as well of eucalyptus forests is that they drop branches all the time. That's what they do. And these trees in the forest that we're living in are many, many hundreds of years old. I mean, some of these trees have, they have a diameter of maybe, some of them up to a foot around. So many of them, probably most of them are at least 2 feet around, and many of them are, a whole meter around.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big tree. That's a tree that's hundreds of years old.
So the difference is that we have more rain, you have less rain, so we have to get ours out of the wood, otherwise it'll be damp all the time. And the problem with damp wood, class, is you have to boil off all that moisture. So think about, you put a pot of water on for spaghetti, let's say. How long does that take? Well, on a propane stove, it may take 20 minutes, and it does around, at our altitude here in Missouri, it takes us 20 minutes to boil, let's say, 6 quarts of water, believe it or not, on a propane stove. So it takes a lot of energy. And if you've got water in your wood, you've got to boil off all that water to make the heat. So you don't want to do that. You want to have dry wood in your wood stove. Okay, Guineith.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to share with our class is the lifestyle that we live is one of preparedness. We have to think way in advance. No matter what it is, we don't go to the store because it's not around the corner. It's not down the block. It's not on the block. It's not across the street. The store is, at least a half an hour trip at the minimum to get to the closest one. And then it's a half an hour back. So going to the store, is something that we plan. And that's just the way our life, we've chosen this lifestyle, and that's the way it is. But for those who have not enjoyed this kind of lifestyle and don't plan, they are in for a rude awakening. Because in California, hundreds of thousands of electric customers have been shut off because of the fires, which are still continuing. So you really don't know. A storm could come in and you could lose your drinkable water. Okay? When the grid goes down, the gas stations don't work. There's so many potential problems, and you really need to think about that. But if you don't live this kind of lifestyle, you think, I just want to have a cup of tea. I'll just take a tea bag, throw it in a mug, put some water out of the tap in the mug, throw it in the microwave, hit 1 minute, boom, done. Well, without electricity, none of that happens.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share it with our class.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Something that I wrote in the email earlier, which is kind of on this topic, was that I've just finished putting our potato crop in for the year. Okay, because here we're spring heading into summer, so it's time to put the potatoes in. And I've just finished planting 185 potatoes, seed potatoes. And that's quite an effort for here, because potatoes are not something that grows easily here, but I think I've figured out how to do it, and that is by by digging polyacrylate crystals into the soil. So these are the crystals that you get in infant diapers. Okay, so what I do is I buy packets of baby nappies, they're called over here, or infant diapers, the disposable kind, and I soak them, one nappy to every foot, and then of dug ground, that is, every square foot of dug ground. And then I dig out the soil, I dig out the sods out of the top, and if the ground is too hard to dig, then I put some water in the trench, and then I go away and do something else for a bit, maybe have a cup of tea or something, some other job in the garden. Then when the soil's soft, I fork it over. So that means I loosen the soil with a fork, and then I fork the polyacrylate jelly from the baby nappy into the soil, and then I plant it. So, and all that is a monumental amount of effort for 100, and then you rinse and then you repeat for the next trench. And in each trench, in 10 and 15 seed potatoes planted. So you can figure out there's quite a number of these trenches. But I said, well, some potatoes I'm going out to the garden to plant them so that we can eat in 6 months' time. And that's exactly the truth.
That's exactly what we're talking about. And, you have to be careful with chickens, because chickens will go into that area. They will love it because they'll think that it's damp and there are bugs and worms in there, and they'll just tear up the leaves of those potato plants. So you have to be careful if you have chickens. Guineith, I've been thinking about the corona panic, and my position is still immutable, no change. I believe it is absolutely real. And, at the beginning of this year, the president had a press conference, and he said there were about 15 cases. And, one got us sick, pretty sick, but, 15 were infected. I'm looking at a map of the United States, and it's everywhere. I mean, it is everywhere. It's across the road from us. There's a person who died from it in our little village of 100 people. Actually, we live outside the village. Families are infected. It's in every single state of the United States. And the one state that has the fewest number of infections is Maine, and that's because nobody knows where Maine is. And it's it's only about just around 5,000 infected. California, 750,000. Texas, about 750,000. Florida, about 2/3 I mean, these are huge numbers. This is real, class. And I'll tell you what I think is happening when we come back. Guineith is with us, and I just wanted to share a couple quick thoughts about the coronavirus. As I mentioned, my position is immutable. And currently, the statistics, according to worldometers.info, says in the United States there's over a total of 9 million cases total. Today, there's 4,500 cases. Just today. Today, there are 59 new deaths. And there are just under 3 million active cases. Just under 3 million. Today. Across the United States. Hospitals are being stretched. Now, I've talked to doctors, and I've talked to nurses, and I've talked to the secretaries at the clinics, They're all saying the same thing. It's real and people are dying. And if you look at the White House, they're acting, and I read an article yesterday that, I'm paraphrasing, that the coronavirus, it's over. You don't have to worry about it. It's done. And it's absolutely nonsense. So what I think the White House is doing is they're trying to let people believe that everything's okay. But it slipped out that their position is there are, and again, I'm paraphrasing, there are so many stupid people who aren't paying attention that we can't control this. We can't stop the spread of it because people are just spreading it through their ridiculous, idiotic behavior, their carelessness, their recklessness. And so the White House is focusing on treatment and a vaccine. Now, if you think about this, if you think about treatment and vaccine, that's like cleaning up the ocean for all the trash that we've dumped in it over the last 100 years. It's real easy to take a barge out in the ocean and dump your trash. It's real hard to go pick it up because it spreads out. And that's what's happening with the virus. It's spreading out. It's everywhere. And it's in almost every county in almost every state. And we live in a county that's got hardly anybody in it. If you look around Washington, D.C., those are hotspots. Why? Because those people travel. Okay? Those people have more money than brains. So what I'm saying is, if you believe that any of what I said is true, why don't you prepare? Because next week is the selection. Next week is when people go absolutely ballistic and crazy. And next week is when I believe the shooting is going to escalate. The violence is going to escalate. It's already gone nuts in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and New York City. Why? Because the police executed a black man with a knife. Now, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you exactly what happened. But I can tell you the reaction. The reaction is stores, businesses are being boarded up in major cities in preparation for the selection next week, next Tuesday. They're being boarded up, and the National Guard is being deployed in the thousands across the country in cities because they're expecting violence. New York State and New York City cops have been training for the violence they're expecting. When in your lifetime have you ever thought that a selection for the President of the United States would become so contentious and possibly so violent? When did you ever think that could happen? Not in the United States, right? Well, here we are. People are buying guns in record numbers. About 2% of Americans per month are having a background check for with the FBI so they can buy a gun through the system. Now, you don't have to buy a gun through the system. You can buy one privately. If your neighbor's got one, your friend's got one, and neither one of you is a felon, it is absolutely okay in many locations, not all, but many, to just say, I'll tell you what, how much do you want for it? I'll buy it. Great. You hand them the money, the transaction's done, and now you have it. That's the way it can be. But 2% of Americans are going through background checks per month now because they are terrified of what's going to happen with the selection and the violence and the BLM and the Proud Boys and the pro-Trumpers and. It's almost going to be like a free-for-all. Mad Max. Guineith and I have talked about it. Guineith, I'd love to hear your opinions when we get back. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. It's dark there right now. It's the middle of the night. And Guineith, you and I have been talking about Mad Max for years on the broadcast. Do you think that's where we're headed?
Oh, yeah. And now I think it's imminent. I think that it's basically here in Victoria. And I think that a lot of people here in Victoria are going to start getting some ideas when they switch the TV on in about a week's time and they see cities burning in America. I'm not advocating anything, but I think that that's what's going to happen because there's a very old saying, and I'm sure it's in America, and I know it's here. It's called monkey see, monkey do. Okay? Meaning most people are not very smart, and they tend to do what they see. That's just how people are, you know? And it's why I live all the way out in the middle of nowhere, because mostly I don't have to be bothered with any of that. I just need to see what's going on the internet, and then the wonderful thing about that is I can switch it off. I can go out in my garden and I can plant potatoes or corn or whatever. Yeah, that's the next thing to go in the garden is my maize crop. You know, all these sorts of crops, they all go in right now in the springtime. But you know what? That is going to happen here because we have a communist dictator here in this state, and his name is called Dan Andrews. And just recently, just the last week or two, you have had a lot of people, I don't know, they must have been, you know, I don't think they listen to you exactly. I think this is more a tide of universe thing than them directly listening to you. But you know how you've said that it might be a good idea to go to, you know, people who think they have authority over you and to, you know, sort of arrange it so that a group of friends all send them the same letter and that says, you're fired. And for you know, maybe 50 people that you know to all send that letter to your representative if he's getting too big for his boots. Well, we've had airplanes towing banners flying over the city of Melbourne, and the banner has read, sack Dan, cancel omnibus, which is the dictatorial piece of legislation toilet paper that he's trying to push through at the moment, which basically gives him dictatorial powers by fiat. That's because he says so. You've had people graffitiing his office, spray painting in the middle of the night, sack Dan all over the shop front in his office. You've had buses park outside the Parliament where the owner of the bus or somebody has, you know, hired the bus and pasted a poster on the bus in 4 or 5 foot high letters saying, sack Dan on the side of the bus. And I think that he needs to be sacked. In fact, I think that that's the very least of what needs to happen to him, but I'm not going to broadcast what I think should happen to him. You know, but this is everybody here. Everybody hates him because he's destroying our state. And the thing about Victorians, they like Victoria. They think it's a great place. And they can see that he is selling our state down the river and turning us into a gigantic concentration camp. And I think that when the Civil War kicks off in America in about a week or two's time, I would give it maybe 8-9 days, you know, just for people to really realize what's happening. But it might be as little as 7 days. They might just, you know, the next morning just wake up and say, yep, let's go riot. Let's go burn something down. We're absolutely not advocating that anyone should do that. We've said that multiple times. We're just saying that we know the tides of history. We can read. We know what happened. And they've telegraphed it through what they've said. They have said that they're going to go and burn stuff down after the elections, whether they win or lose. They have said that. It is the Democrats have said that. We're not Democrats. I don't think you're a Democrat, you know. I know I'm certainly not what we would call Labor here in Victoria. I'm not affiliated with any political party here in Victoria. There was one brief time when I was, but I would, like I said, I would describe myself as being a voluntarist or an anarcho-capitalist, which means that I believe that everybody ought to be free to do what they want as long as they don't hurt anyone, and that they ought to be able to go out and make money in the best way that they see fit. That's just how it is. And, you know, like I said, on the proviso that it doesn't hurt anyone, and if it does hurt someone, then that someone that's been injured should have the right to go and seek a correction of that grievance on whatever terms, you know, fits them best. But this is it. There's no justice out there. You know, these Democrats, they're fond of saying no justice, no peace. Well, there is no justice, and there is no peace. You know, we're not going to kid ourselves, but there's no justice and no peace because of them. Because they, you know, it is the whole system. It has been the Republicans in recent years as much as it's been the Democrats. And I think I heard one of your instructors in the last 2 days say that the last really good president that the U.S. had was President Reagan. And I would be inclined to agree. You know, I was just listening the other day to, you know, that Phil Collins song, Land of Confusion. And I thought, wow, this is now more relevant than ever. You know, if anyone wants to go and listen to that, it's on YouTube. Just go listen to it. And I thought, wow, this is, you know, I remember listening to this song when I was a kid and not really understanding it, and then going back and listening to it again and really understanding it and saying, boy, jingies, you know, this is just, I can scarcely believe that we are where we are. We are headed for the apocalypse. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Absolutely. You know, as you're saying this, I was thinking about the 70s. And this all ties, class. Back in the mid-70s, I had graduated from the university. And I was hired by a Fortune 100 company. I was very fortunate. And it was a Fortune 100 company. And there was a man who was part of this Fortune 100 company who was a medical doctor. And his last name was Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E, Dr. Byrne. And his brother was a guy named Brendan Byrne. And from 1974 to 1982, his brother was, the doctor's brother, was the governor of the Garden State, also known as New Jersey, a very corrupt state. And Brendan Byrne decided that there should be a tax increase. Temporary. And so there was a tax increase in New Jersey, and the residents of New Jersey were so outraged that what they did was they sent him in the mail toilet paper. Now, I'm not making this up, and I'm not advocating it. I'm just telling you what happened. This is historical fact. They sent him toilet paper in envelopes, but it wasn't in pristine condition. It had been used at least once.
Oh, dear me.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And there were bumper stickers. There were bumper stickers all over the Garden State. This was all over the news. And this guy's name, the governor's name, was Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E. And the bumper stickers read, "Burns my butt." Except they didn't use the word butt. Okay? That's what people thought of their governor, Brendan Byrne. So there has, and so here we are, decades and decades later, right? We're still talking about the bumper stickers. We're still talking about "Burns my butt." We're still talking about the toilet paper. So people do have memories. And when you talk about Dan, sack, S-A-C-K, Dan, that means get rid of him, dump him, it doesn't mean kill him. It just means we want him out of here. We don't want, it's just haul him away. He can still have oxygen and all that, but you don't want him in office. That's what that means. And I'm paraphrasing. It doesn't mean harm him. It just means you've had it with him. He's caused enough problems, and you just don't want him in office anymore telling people what to do. Well, that's how they felt about Brendan Byrne. And what you mentioned, I heard that story. There were some people in the corrupt Commonwealth of Virginia in a small county, and they wanted to get rid of some of the people telling them what to do, meaning like the county administration type. And they just took 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, and they wrote these allegedly elected county representatives' names on the front. They just folded it 8.5 by 11 into what looked like a number 10 envelope, folded it twice, so it's three sides, and they wrote the person's first name, and it was about a dump. They didn't want to have a dump in the county, and the county administration wanted to have a dump. The people didn't want to have the dump, so they wrote the guy's first name. They wrote his middle name as Dump, and then they wrote his last name, sent it to his house, his business, his official office, and on the back of it, it just said, "You're fired." No return address. It was just anonymous. And hundreds of these were sent out from post office boxes all over the county. And these local county administration types were so afraid that that was the only thing that undid the dump. Other than that, the television, the news, the meetings, nothing worked. And we mentioned the term Mad Max. 1979 thriller, societal collapse. That's what Mad Max is, societal collapse. Guineith, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you think that means in terms of where we're headed?
Okay. Here in Victoria, what I think is going to happen, I'll tell you what has happened in the last few years. 2 years ago, our state premier, Dan Andrews, the one and the same, he sold us out he sold the whole state to the United Nations. He sold us out to the United Nations, to the Strong Cities Network program, which basically is designed to, on their own website, which is something like www.strongcitiesnetwork.org or something. You can look it up on your favourite search engine anyway. But they say that the purpose of the Strong Cities Network is to counter violent extremism, which is rather unusual because here in Victoria, basically, there has been no violent extremism because we are Australians and we are about the most laid-back people on earth. Our national motto is, "She'll be right, mate," which translates to something of, "It doesn't matter, everything will work out, so why worry?" That is the Australian attitude to life, And I know that Paul Hogan made a really famous ad a number of years ago that was, "Throw another shrimp on the barbie." That about sums it up. There's no violent extremism here. but they're creating violent extremism. They are poking, as you would say in America, they're poking the bear, okay? Now what that means for people who don't know is a bear in the forest is generally a pretty peaceful creature. It just wanders around the forest, digs up roots and eats berries. That's what it does. It might catch the occasional fish or whatever. But normally they don't actually do that much to hurt anybody until you poke them. Now, if you see a bear sleeping in the forest, you definitely should not poke it. Because if you poke it, it's going to get annoyed at you and it's going to react. And it's going to react in quite an interesting way, which I'm sure that you could all imagine. So what they're doing is they are poking the bear of Australia, and specifically Australian nationalism. And Australians might be a pretty laid-back bunch of people, but they really, really like Australia, And if you go interfering with their prosperity, with their laid-back way of life, and you start doing a whole lot of stuff that impinges on their freedoms, they are going to start reacting. And they're going to start reacting in a way that is, is ultimately going to hurt you as the person doing the poking in the end. And, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, because Aussies want to be left alone. But they've got a history that, we talk on this show quite a bit about epigenetics, okay? And the epigenetic, and what, especially by Australian, okay? I'm especially talking about Australians of Western European origin, okay? Especially Australians of British origin. Not the first Australians, they were the Aborigines. The original, the descendants of the original white settlers of Australia, okay? They were either prisoners or those who had been sent to guard them. And often, those who had been sent to guard them were only maybe half a rung up the ladder above those who were needing to be guarded. They might have even been from the same family in some cases. This is it. So they're from the working class, either criminal or the members of the blue team of that day that the British wanted to get rid of because they were awkward to be around. So I'd like to discuss this on the other side at the top of the hour.
Yeah. Yeah, and so very quickly, cutting to the chase, is there any way that you can see this not being violent? Is there any way? Because I can't.
It's going to get violent.
I agree. We'll be right back. We'll talk more about this with Guineith Isaacs, and she's giving us her perspective live from Australia. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. She lives off-grid. She lives on a farm. She raises her own food. And she looks up, down, left, right, forward, and backward. And she pays attention. And what she's sharing with you is her view on what she thinks is going to happen in the near future after this election for CEO in the United States of America. Worldwide violence is rampant. People are frustrated. People have had it. People have had the good life, and they don't like not having the freedoms that they used to have. They don't like the response from the White House. They don't like the profanity from Hollywood. They don't like what's happening with the Boy Scouts of America, where Boy Scout leaders have been abusing children. They don't like the sexual perversion. They don't like it. And they are rising up. They don't like the police brutality. They don't like the overcharging by companies. They don't like the fact that there's nobody to call. They don't like the fact that they buy service, they get charged for service, and they don't get the service. They don't like the fact that no one knows how to fix a car today. They don't like the fact that products are substandard. They don't like the fact that Home Depot sells substandard appliances. They don't like the fact that there aren't very many choices for good American products anymore. They don't like the fact that the Clinton crime syndicate has enabled China to dominate the manufacturing process for the world, and we don't have much in manufacturing here. They don't like that. And it's all coming to a head. And this is happening worldwide. Asia has become the marketing and manufacturing force. If you want to buy sneakers, they come from Asia. If you want to buy socks, they come from Asia. If you want to buy towels, they come from outside the United States. I don't believe that Australia is making any products that I believe that they're not making as many products as they used to. Most everything is coming from Asia. And if you think I'm kidding, you just go, if you happen to be in a parking lot where they have cars and you see all these Asian cars everywhere, just push with your thumb. Now don't try to dent it, but just push with your thumb against some of the sheet metal and you'll say, wow, I didn't think it was that flimsy. And then push against an American pickup truck, an older one, and you'll see the difference. Push against a Mercedes, push against a German car, and then push against an Asian one. And you will see that the Asians have figured out how to make it 20% lighter and make it look just as thick, or half as thick and make it look just as thick. It's an outrage, and people have absolutely, positively had it. We're coming unglued. And the violence, I believe, is going to escalate. Guineith, your take on violence, as you mentioned, you wanted to talk more about that.
Yeah. There was a video appeared recently on YouTube. I think I might have sent it to you. So this woman, she had come to Australia. I think she was actually a medical doctor. But she'd come to us, when she was younger. I think she did her training when she was in Australia. But she came from Bosnia. And she was originally allowed into Australia as a refugee from the war that they had in Bosnia during the 1990s, from 1992 to 1994. There was an absolutely terrible conflict in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Sarajevo, Kosovo, all that part of the world. It just erupted in violence. And these days, if you talk about that part of the world, everybody rolls their eyes and says, oh, gosh, that area. Because at the time it was headline news every single day that they had this massive, brutal civil war there. All through that region, it just blew up into this massive conflict. But people forget what a civilized part of the world that was. That in 1984, Bosnia hosted the Winter Olympics at Sarajevo, of all places. And nobody remembers that. I remembered that because I think I watched it on TV. You remember the Sarajevo Olympics? Yeah. Yeah,
and yes, I do. And I remember a few years later, the whole area was bombed out. Yeah. Destroyed.
Absolutely. Totally destroyed. It went from being one of the most civilized, cultured parts of Europe where everybody went for their ski holidays. This was a ski resort. And it erupted in 8 years after that. It was just boom, just absolutely, you would not go for a ski holiday, I don't think, in Sarajevo even today, because I think that it's probably still rebuilding all these years later. People don't realize that nobody in Berlin expected for Berlin to, be what it became during World War II. If you had asked somebody in, let's say, I don't know, maybe in 1900, if you had asked the residents of Berlin where they thought their city would be in 40 years' time, I don't think they would have picked the right answer, because Berlin was a hub of philosophical, cultural education, and it seems to be, and Budapest is the same. Budapest became a communist hellhole during the Cold War. But if you had asked the people of Budapest in Hungary, well, yeah, I think you would say it in America, Budapest. Maybe people on air might understand that, but the natives of that part of the world called it Budapest. But Budapest, you would say that the people there, if you had asked them before communism took a hold, or what do you think, where do you think your city will be in 30 years' time, they would not pick communist hellhole for the answer, but that's what it became. And eventually they did kick the communists out. It took a war for them to kick the communists out. But, this is every place. You look at Belfast, okay? Look at the architecture of Belfast. It is some of the best architecture in Europe. These were not Neanderthal cavemen that built that city, okay? These were highly cultured and civilized people. The Irish are highly cultured and civilized people. They were, for hundreds and hundreds of years, the very fount of Christian culture in Europe. While the rest of the Europeans were wallowing in the Dark Ages, the Irish had poetry and they had culture and they had, proper cities, and they had the Bible in their own language. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, they were the only city other than the Romans who had the Bible in their own language. And it was, you don't think of that when you think of Northern Ireland, But the Northern Irish, before the English got there, 800 years ago, were some of the most cultured people in Europe. And the only reason why now, when you mention Northern Ireland, once again, everybody rolls their eyes and says, oh boy, that place, is because the English had their boot on the Irish neck for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, including that they tried to starve the whole country out. That millions and millions of Irish people died as a result of the potato famine, and hundreds of thousands and more, maybe up to 1 million more, emigrated. We don't even know the numbers for sure. All that we have is the census data, and I think I saw the census data some time ago. These figures might not be accurate, but I seem to remember, it was a long time ago that I saw these figures. In 1845, the Irish population was something like 12 million people. And then in 1850, 5 years later, it was something like 3 million people. Those figures might be wrong. But, whatever the figures are, I don't think anyone even has accurate figures. But what is known is that millions of people starved to death during the potato famine, and it was all England's fault because the British were exporting food out of Ireland all through the famine. And they were using property taxes to force the eviction of tenants and to strong-arm landlords into evicting their tenants. When the whole property tax thing was a fraud anyway under British common law. But that didn't seem to matter to the people who thought they ran the show. And then people wonder why Northern Ireland blew up into the, first of all, the Irish War of Independence, and then the Irish Civil War. And then 50 years after that, when things still hadn't been put right, they, trouble, which only finished in 1994. Now, for younger class members, they may not have been alive in 1994. I was alive in 1994, and I was, I was already, I'd already begun my academic career at the University of Melbourne in 1994, and I went on, when I was at Melbourne University, they were never published. They were bachelor's papers, but I went on to write academic papers on the history of the Highland clearances and the Irish Trouble. That's what they came to be called. Once you begin studying this, it's really, really easy to pick the pattern of what goes on, because it's the same thing over and over and over again. And it's the hardest thing in the world for me to look outside my door on the internet and to see where we are headed, which is we are headed for somewhere like Bosnia. We are headed for somewhere like Northern Ireland. We are headed for this sort of scenario. And actually, if it turns out to only be that, we'll be doing quite well, because it could go full Mad Max. And I think it probably will go full Mad Max. And there's absolutely nothing that I can do about it, one way or another. All that I can do is make sure my own house is in order. Does that make sense, Vincent?
10-4. I absolutely agree with you. There's nothing we can do about it. And talk radio is just that. We're do radio, but talk radio just talk. Guineith is with us, live in Australia. And Guineith, you mentioned the 1936 Olympics. Class, if you go to your favorite search engine and you type in 1936 Olympics, you'll find that, and you click on images, you'll find plenty of images, photos, if you will, of those Olympics. And you'll see that there are lots of people in the streets. You'll see flags from lots of countries. And there's the United States flag, and right next to it, in full display, in Berlin, is the Nazi flag, swastika, right next to the American flag. And so if you look at images of the 1936 Olympics, you'll see Adolf Hitler was there addressing a huge crowd. That crowd dwarfs the kinds of crowds that you see today. Dwarfs them. You will see buttons that you can wear on your lapel that say 1936 Olympics. And you'll see the 4 rings. And it will say Olympics Berlin. And you'll see the German eagle with the swaz on it, the swastika. You'll see there are lots of photographs with the swastika. You will see images of the Hindenburg, LZ-129, which I have a studio, a photo of, like 18 by 24 inches. Original photograph of the Hindenburg on the voyage just before it blew up at Lakehurst Naval Ammunition Station in New Jersey. We're talking about things can change very quickly. So in 1936, everything was great. The Americans were competing. All these nations were competing in the Olympics. Next thing you know, Germany is after they declared war on us in 1941, we finally were able to retaliate and start bombing Germany. That's what happened. So it can change in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye. So we're talking about Mad Max. We're trying to say that the world is unstable, absolutely unstable. We've got martial law can be declared in a couple of weeks. The president literally can start Martial law. And what is martial law? Martial law is whatever they say it is. Food can be rationed. Drugs can be rationed. I'm not talking about illegal drugs. I'm talking about life-sustaining drugs. Medical services can be rationed. I'm sorry?
Pharmaceuticals can be rationed.
Pharmaceuticals, right. Right.
Pharmaceuticals.
Food,
yes.
Pharmaceuticals, fuel. Right. And class, you may not remember this. You'd have to be, maybe a little bit older than Dr. Shealy, who's 90, to remember this. But my mother and father remember rationing. So if you wanted sugar, you could get it. All you needed was to be able to pay for it and a ration coupon. That's all you needed to do to get sugar. If you wanted meat, you could do the same thing, but you had to have the ration coupon for it. If you wanted a tire for your vehicle, same thing. If you wanted gasoline, same thing. Everything was pretty much rationed during the First Great Depression. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? The Americans think that you just go to the store and buy it. Well, you may not be able to. And that's what Guineith and I and Rich, even all the instructors here at USA Prepares have been trying to tell you. Maybe you hear the deep concern in my voice. I am extremely concerned. Just try to buy paper towels. Go ahead. Try. Kathy's going to be with us next Friday. And she's going to tell us some history of pricing. What has happened over the years with prices? You know, it's incremental. So it goes up a little bit. I was talking to our son this morning. We ordered some tires. They were delivered. We have a tire shop here. You know, people buy tires from us. No kidding. And why? Because they think we do a better job and they think we do it for less. And the answer is we do. But I asked them, so what's happening with prices? Well, they're going up. But here's the thing. How can they be going up when people aren't driving? Who's driving? Who's wearing out tires? Not too many people. But the price is going up. Yeah, I just talked with our son. We got a delivery of tires today, this morning. And I said, did you get them all? I said, no, got about half of them. So what I'm trying to tell you, class, is with no uncertainty, it's getting more difficult to get things that you might need. We buy auto parts every day. Literally, no exaggeration. And we're finding out that, well, they can get it for us, but it's not in the store. It's not on the shelf. And more items have to be special ordered for us. I'm going to tell you something that will absolutely shock you, but this is the truth. Everything I tell you is the truth. But I want you to, try to verify, do your own research. And all of our instructors say the same thing. We buy oil. We do a lot of service on vehicles here at the farm. And we buy oil in bulk. And we try to buy it at the lowest price of the year, or a couple times a year. And we negotiate the price with the sellers. And they may have a sale, and we look at that and we say, well, that's nice. But we think it should be a little bit less than that. And we're willing to buy a lot of it. I mean, a lot. If the price is lower. So, for example, we'll get it about 10% lower than the sale price. And when we bought oil about a week ago, I'm talking about engine oil, diesel engine oil, fully synthetic, 5W30, conventional 5W30, oil like that. In order to fill our order, we cleaned out most of the stores in the greater Springfield area of a national auto parts chain. In order to meet our order, I'm not kidding. They emptied the shelves of 5 or 6 or 7 stores. All the oil they had came to us. That's how thin the supply is. Now, why did they do that? Because they had a customer who was ready, willing, and able to buy engine oil. And they know that we pay for it. They know that when they deliver it, Actually, we picked it up. This particular one, normally they deliver it, but we picked it up. This oil, the amount of oil that we bought, it took a trailer, 10 feet long, 6.5 feet wide, filled to capacity to bring the oil back to the farm. And this is for customers. Okay? So what I'm telling you is that the supply is way, way, way thinner than you might think. David in Illinois, welcome. You're on with Guineith Isaacs.
Hey, how you doing? You were talking about yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
You were talking about prices. Now, I spoke to you about what happened to my German Shepherd. Now, he got sick. 3 weeks it took me to get into the vet because of the closest vet to me. They gave me the current prices. Within that 3 weeks, their prices doubled. I called right before we were going to go there. Doubled. Now, they also said we have a policy you cannot go in because of the virus restrictions. But then the lady said, but if you're willing to pay more, we'll look the other way. And, so I was glad that I remembered the vet we used to go to that moved. And they were really fine. Didn't charge me anything extra. And for what I had wind up having to happen, they were very cordial. But here's the other thing I didn't tell you about. The things that, we're dealing with now, because they've been harassing us to come in for covert testing, the two of us. I won't do it. They cut off my insurance. So I'm having to decide what to do medically over what to do food-wise in my house. And I never, ever was late or done anything with my utilities. They're always done ahead of time. So I picked one of your ideas, Guineith. Call your people and see about working something out ahead of time. They said they don't care. My electric company, it's a co-op too, like yours. They don't care. If you don't pay it on time, they don't care about the virus. They will shut you off. And I said, wait a minute. You're not doing virus things? Are your staff's working? Oh, no, some of the staff's at home and off work because of the virus, but we're still paying them. Now, wait a minute. So you got all these people. If it's got to be happening to a lot of people. Everything's getting hit. Everything in the store. Bleach is expensive. Everything is expensive now. It's going up every time I go out, if they even have it.
I don't want to do I told you so. And I'm not speaking to you, David, and I'm not speaking to Guineith. I'm speaking to the class. When the coronavirus first hit in the early part of this year, like January, I said there would be massive inflation. I said there would be a panic. I said there would be short supply. It's all here. Now, it's not like I'm the brightest guy on the planet. It's just obvious. It's absolutely obvious. Anybody who has paid any attention to history knows. Anybody who has taken Economics 101 knows about supply and demand. Anybody who pays attention to the supply chain knows that Walmart doesn't have any back room, except maybe for the meat department, where they stage and then they open the boxes and put the meat on the refrigerated display cases. Other than that, there's no back room. So the supply, the back room that used to be at these stores is now the tractor trailer on the way to the store. That is the back room. And if anything happens to that tractor trailer, like an engine problem or a blown tire, the inventory is not going to make it to the store. It'll be delayed.
Now, I have another comment. Sorry.
When we bought tires, let me just weave this into it. I don't buy 4 tires. If I need 4 tires, I buy 5. Because I know they're going to change the design. I know that I'm going to have trouble getting one to match. I know that there's a possibility that with all the stones in the dirt road that we have, I'm going to get sliced tires. And I know that I don't know when, but I know I'm going to have a sidewall puncture or a non-repairable puncture. Not just like a nail. I'm talking about, like an arrow being shot through it. That kind of a thing. That's the kind of stones we have around here. Arrowheads, that's what we drive over. And I know that it would be stupid for me to just buy 4 tires because one of them is going to get destroyed at least, and at least I'll have one to make the back to that complete set of 4 should one fail. So I buy 5. Well, 3 of them, it's going to take a couple weeks to get them. No, I'm talking about a general tire. I'm not talking about some weird name. I'm talking about sooner or later you'll own Generals. Those guys? Really? That's what's happening across the country, and it's not just tires. David?
No. Here's another thing. With these riots and the protests, there's truckers refusing to haul their goods into these cities. So you have that problem too. And it's going to get worse. The worse it gets, this is going to get worse.
Okay, so
now
I've talked to Norm Schuler, on the air. I'm not sharing any secrets. It's getting a little more difficult to get medical supplies, and the prices are going up. Okay? So we may think that, we'll just take the cat, the dog, to the vet, okay? Our domestic animals. Well, the veterinarian may not have the supplies necessary for surgery, may not have the anesthetics, may not have the biologicals, may not have the antibiotics. It depends on how well they plan. Now, veterinarians are pretty good because most of them are farmers, right? They plan, but they may not be able to get the supplies. This is for real. And some of the biologicals, come in one of those styrofoam cases because they have to be refrigerated during transportation. So they pack it with dry ice and they put them in those like Omaha steak type shipping containers, styrofoam, 2 inches thick, so they can survive the 2-day transportation. Well, we may have a tough time getting those things. Hypodermic needles. Where do they come from? Most of them come from the Chi-Coms. No kidding.
Oh,
yeah.
You know something, Vincent? I know that I emailed you privately on a similar topic. People are going to have to, it's kind of an interesting topic. People are going to have to learn how to do their own medical care for themselves, and they're going to have to learn how to do their own medical care for their animals. They're just going to have to do that. And from time to time in the past, I've had to do medical procedures on myself, on my children, and on my animals, because there has been no medical care simply for the fact that we, for a long time, we've lived out in the middle of nowhere. And, there have been times where my family and I have been homeless in the middle of the Australian outback, and there is no medical care out there, and you've got to figure out how to do it yourself.
Okay, let me give you one example.
All it is.
Let me give you one example, class. So, if you go to the dentist, they'll say, don't forget to floss. Don't forget to floss. You don't have to floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep, right? All right. Well, that being the case, we take dental floss is almost irrelevant, but we take it for granted. We take Q-tips for granted. We used to take toilet paper for granted. We used to take paper towels for granted, washcloths, soap. We used to take all this stuff for granted. Try to get it now. Just try. It's getting harder. It really is. So now it's almost like if you see it and you have the money and you need it, you ought to buy it because it may not be available tomorrow. Our son was buying tires, with me yesterday, and we're looking on at the website, and we're, picking which tires we want. And he said, Dad, we got to go faster. Come on, hurry up, Dad, because if you wait another minute and you try to decide between this tread pattern and that tread pattern, they'll probably be gone. Come on. And it's not like I really dilly-dally. It's not like that. I'm trying to be really efficient, but I want to get the right ones. Well, now it looks like you got to hurry up because there's somebody in front of you. And if you try to buy something on the internet and you put it in your cart, and if you say, well, let me go get a cup of coffee, I'll be right back. and then you come back and you find out it's out of your cart because someone else bought it. Well, that was the last.
Yep.
That was the last 6-pack of peas, or that last 6-pack of corn, or that was the last pound of spaghetti or pasta sauce. Seriously, that's what's happening, and I am not exaggerating. David, are you finding this, or is it? Okay.
Yes. Not just that. The quality control is terrible. The cans of vegetables we've received within the last few months that we bought bulked up on, we have not found one can without twigs, sticks, something in it.
Bugs in spaghetti?
Everyone.
Bugs in Aldi spaghetti? I know Guineith loves Aldi. We used to. Yeah, bugs. Where'd they come from? Bugs in the spaghetti. Cases of bugs from Aldi. And great value. Guineith is with us live in Australia. David's on with us in Illinois. And I mentioned I was going to talk more about this on Friday, but during hour number 1, but David brought it up first. And that is the quality of items is going down. People aren't paying attention to quality control. And so one of the boys bought some Tazo tea, T-A-Z-O. And it's, they're individually, there's a box, and in there it's like 20 tea bags, and each one is in a paper envelope. And they were manufactured such that the glue that holds the paper envelope together with the bag inside, the glue adhered to the tea bag. So when you open up the paper envelope to get to the tea bag, you shred the tea bag and you destroy it. So I open one box, and I found a lot of them. So open another box, same thing. So I called Tazo, talked to a really nice guy. Unilever, this multinational corporation, is the owner of Tazo. So you think it's this boutique tea. It's owned by Unilever. Anyway, so the customer service rep, and we're talking about, I don't know, a couple $1 box of tea, right? Maybe, I don't know, $2, something like that. And he said, well, you should get it at a different store. What he's telling me, he's saying, well, yeah, this is Walmart, right? Probably came from Walmart, I guess. One of those, you order it and then they bring it out to you, and throw it in your truck, that kind of thing. Well, what he was saying is, I said Walmart, and he said, why don't you get it from a different store? What he's saying is there are probably so many defective boxes of tea that were in that shipment. Go someplace else, and maybe you will find ones that aren't defective. David, I'm putting an exclamation point on what you said. You are spot on, right on the money. I'm not kidding. Any comments, David, and then Guineith? Yeah,
yesterday, my wife made some pasta. It turned into nothing but a pile of gum. It had to be thrown away. We just bought that from Walmart. Now, I do know people that work and did deliveries from Walmart, and Walmart will buy the substandard, not checked, or things that maybe something was wrong when they did a spot check on one, so they would take the whole pallet aside. That's why they get the stuff so cheap. But I assume they would be better. I don't want to eat twigs when I'm getting a can of vegetables every time.
You talking about beans? You talking about beans? Green beans?
Yeah. Yep. You got it.
Okay. How did I know? Well, class, it's not just me. It's not just David. Guineith, what's happening in Australia? Are you seeing the failure of the quality assurance people, the quality control people? Are we going back to Japan like just before World War II, where people used to say, oh, that's junk, it's made in Japan? No kidding. We fixed that. A couple of professors from the University of New Mexico went over to Japan and fixed the quality problem. And I'm not kidding. You can look that up. One of them's name was Demig. But we fixed that. And made in Japan = junk. That's what it used to mean, made in Japan. Well, we're heading that way. Guineith, is it happening in Australia too?
Mostly here in Australia, the food quality is still okay, for whatever reason. But what I wanted to mention was, just to put an exclamation point on what David from Illinois was saying about his trouble getting medical care for himself and for his animals. and also everything. People need to figure out what people did before the modern world was invented, because the modern world wasn't always here. Okay? And another thing, so many products here in Victoria, there's not a quality issue, but there's an issue with over-regulation. So a lot of product are becoming hard to obtain because the industries that, that those products are built around are just getting regulated to smithereens. Okay? There's too much red tape. And what people are going to have to do is they're going to have to fight. They're going to have to do what people did during World War II when this happened, when they had the ration books and the coupons and all of that. It was all too much for some people. All the products were unobtainable. So a black market developed. All right? And people are going to have to develop or establish black markets just to obtain product. That is what people are going to have to do out of necessity. I'm not saying that anybody should willfully go and pursue a criminal career, but this is a matter of survival. That we are unable to get goods and services that we need, and in order to get things that we need, people are going to have to establish their own systems for getting them, whether the government approves or not.
Okay, so a farmer down the road, you're right on the money. Farmer down the road got a call. I called the veterinarian, and the veterinarian said, "Well, y'all live near the Finellis. You know them, right? Give their boy a call. He'll be glad to help you." And this is with veterinarian issues. What we're saying, class, is doctoring at home, learning how to do it. Guineith is right. David is right. We're in a lot of trouble.